CTE has been associated with repetitive head impacts, that is, repetitive concussion and subconcussive injury in contact sport athletes, but also in military veterans. With repeated impacts to the head, the brain inside the skull ricochets back and forth. It goes forward, accelerates and decelerates, but it also goes rotationally. And that causes the brain inside the skull to actually elongate and stretch. And that stretching puts a lot of physical force on the individual nerve cells, especially the neurons and the axons. And that can lead to the buildup of tau. Tau is a normal protein in the brain, and normally it's inside the nerve cell, and it contributes to what we call the cytoskeleton, or the skeleton of the cell. It helps hold up the cell shape. Under abnormal circumstances, like after trauma, when the nerve cells are damaged, the tau actually comes off off the skeleton. It comes off the microtubules and it starts clumping up, and eventually it'll kill the cell if enough builds up over time.
What we have are 3 brains of individuals who all played football. This is a player that died in his late 40s. He only played high school football. This is a suicide. And this is a player who died in his 80s, having played many years of professional football. And this is another professional football player, 14 or 15 years of professional NFL football. When we look at the brain of a man in his late 40s, you can see that there are crevices between the gyri, and those should normally not be there. When we look at the brain of this professional player, looks to be some thinning of this hypothalamic area. And then when we look at this case, in the medial temporal lobes, there's a lot of atrophy, and you can see a marked thinning of the hypothalamus. It's ballooned and thinned, and that's another feature of chronic traumatic encephalopathy. We're going to make a section right through this brain and see if we can see any changes interiorly. It's just not good. Accounting for the splaying of the brain, this third ventricle is huge. So are the lateral ventricles. The corpus callosum is thinned. And notably, the septum is just a series of filaments. You can just see some thread-like appendages hanging from the surface of the corpus callosum. The other features of this brain are this tannish ribbon on the outside of the brain with very prominent small blood vessels. That's not a normal finding. So we can't make the diagnosis of CTE looking at the brain with our naked eye. We can only do it underneath the microscope. When we see this kind of change grossly, it almost always indicates end-stage CTE. We see a lot of CTE lesions on the top and the lateral sides of the frontal lobes, which is about 2/3 of the forward part of the brain. That's what leads to the symptoms and signs of CTE. Loss of memory, some behavioral and personality change, and often mood changes like depression. The real key to preventing CTE is preventing exposure to head impacts. So anything an individual athlete can do to minimize the amount of head contact, the number of falls or blows. If we can detect it in these young individuals, that will give us an idea what triggers it. And then if we can detect it in those early stages, we have a really good path for treating it.